Hi everyone, I'm Jeff Teague. I'm with Fred Anderson Toyota in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've been here since 2005 and I get to see firsthand and behind the scenes what a fantastic organization this is. But a lot of you don't know Fred Anderson himself, and we're privileged enough to have him today. Mr. Anderson, I'm so glad you're here. How are you today?
Well, I'm well, Jeff, and thank you for having me.
No problem at all. I'm excited because I compare this sort of to The Wizard of Oz. You know, at the end they saw the man behind the curtain. Who is that Fred Anderson? Does he really exist? And I've heard that in the past 15 years, and I'm privileged and pleased to know you absolutely do. Well, what I'm really curious about is you have such a successful business and organization running right now. Have you always wanted to be in car sales, or is there something else you wanted to do when you were growing up?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there was, Jeff. I grew up in a car family. My dad was a small-town car dealer up in Waynesville, North Carolina. Previously, Creedmoor, North Carolina was his first dealership. So I was just a kid, you know, working in a dealership, cleaning cars and doing the odd jobs that little kids can do, you know. And so I was around it all my life, but then I got a real passion for flying and for aviation.
Really?
Yeah, and so when I was 16 years old, I got a private pilot's license and got in college, and I got a commercial license. And during the summer, one of my college years, I drove up to Akron, Ohio. There was a freight company there. It was had a training school, and they flew freight for the automotive companies, and they went all over during the night to all the Flint, Michigan, and Cleveland Hopkins, and Youngstown, and you know where all Willow Run, where all the auto factories were, and they flew freight, emergency freight deliveries into those plants to keep the plants running. So their deal was, if you came there and paid for flight instruction, they'd let you ride co-pilot and have that experience, you know, flying with their freight guys overnight. So I stayed in the YMCA for $3 a night, slept under a World War II rough wool army blanket.
Wow.
And took flight instruction during the day, got a multi-engine and instrument rating, and flew freight at night. And what I got to do was mostly watch and load the boxes. That's mostly what I got to do. But it was fun, and that's what I thought I was going to do. And then in my senior year in college, right in the spring, as I was approaching the end of the year, I get a phone call from my dad, and at the place where I lived at school, and he said, you know, there's an opportunity. I got a call from Chuck Green at Chevrolet today, and this dealership's suddenly available kind of on an emergency basis. And he asked me if we had somebody we could put in there by the end of the week. And I said, he said, would you be interested in that? And I said, yeah, I'll give that a shot. So instead of going to be a pilot, I decided to go and try to be a car dealer. So that's how it happened.
So you started at a Chevrolet dealer and they put you in charge. Talk about on a less than a week's notice. That's incredible. How did you know what to do?
I didn't. I didn't know what to do. You know, I left school on Friday. I showed up at what became Anton Chevrolet Olds in Canton on Saturday morning. There were about 20 employees there. It's a really small place in a little paper mill town. And you know, I'd been around a car dealership all my life, but I by no means knew enough to be the dealer operator. And I signed the franchise agreement with General Motors that year, of course, 1970. I was 21 years old, and at the time I was the youngest person to ever sign a General Motors franchise agreement. At the time, that was the legal age at which you could sign that was the age of majority, as we say, you know. So anyway, whatever distinction that might offer. So I went to work there, and I know one of the things that's on your mind is what are some of the basic philosophies that have helped us to survive and thrive over all these years. And one of them came from that very first month or two or three at Anton Chevrolet in Canton. I showed up not knowing what I really needed to do to fulfill my responsibilities, and unfortunately, I pretty quickly learned there were a lot of other people in that building didn't really know everything they needed to do. If they had known, they would have been successful, and they were not successful, and that's why I was there. So, you know, just out of necessity, we started learning the things we needed to know. You know, how do you run a service department? How do you run a parts inventory? How do you manage a parts inventory? We set up a finance and insurance department, you know, and that was a brand new thing back in those days. And so the department managers and I would go away to seminars and schools and the NADA convention and go from 1 hour presentation to 1 hour presentation to 1 hour presentation. And, we just went out there and learned together and came home with these binders, and, we would talk and study, and I'd go in the parts department and help the guy or look over Ted Rhodes' shoulder as he managed the inventory, and we just learned together. And so what we realized at that time, and what somebody here in Chapel Hill has said in more recent years, and said it very well, I think, but what I realized at that time was, if you help your people become great business people, they'll help you be a great business person. If we attend to their success and progress, then our success and progress takes care of itself. Now, Dr. Jerry Bell in Chapel Hill has a little program, and he says, to build your business, build your people. And that's a really succinct way of saying that, but I stumbled onto it quite by accident in the early 70s, and it's really kind of what we still do. It's very much what we still do, is try to attract good people, good personalities, good character, people who want to do things the right way and maybe have a little ambition and they're willing to work hard. And then we try to give them the tools they need and the educational opportunities they need to develop their skills and grow. And if they grow, we grow. Pretty simple.
That's amazing. And boy, talk about an internship on the fly. You had to learn the basics, the expertise. You had to learn the processes on the fly. And what you just said is real interesting to me, because when I started working here, I could not believe what a veteran sales force there was. And as you know, in the car business very well, there can be a lot of turnover. Yeah. And one of the frustrations with potential customers is, who did you buy your car from? I don't remember, they're not here anymore. And that happens a lot. But when I came here, I could not believe just the years that veteran salespeople had on them. There would be half the sales force had been here longer than 10 years. Mm-hmm. And that's almost unheard of in the car business. And I wonder if that has to do with your key philosophy of investing and believing in helping your personnel or your resources grow and thrive.
I hope so. And that leads to another philosophy that we have in the family, which is, if you take the very best care you can of your people, they'll take the very best care of your customers. So if you have a happy, productive, cared for body of employees, you're very likely to have happy customers. So you got to have this before you get that. You can't work on customer satisfaction and customer service. Mm-hmm. You have to work on employee satisfaction, and then that'll lead to customer satisfaction.
And I wonder if Fred Anderson Toyota is the family store, and I wonder if it, based on what you said, has multiple meanings and multiple levels to the term family store. Maybe it's not just that this is a family-run organization, but you view your employees and even your customers and the people who do business with you, who are working with you, perhaps you're talking about them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've come to believe over the years about advertising is that your advertising, in order for it to work well, it better reflect who you really are. If you go into the media and you present one persona or one image or one set of values, and then people come to your business and they don't see those things, if it's inconsistent, it doesn't work. So your advertising better say something about and better reflect who you really are. And that's how that evolved. It kind of is the way we operate. And it comes from my dad. He was a really, really small town Chevrolet dealer in Creedmoor, North Carolina, and later in Waynesville, North Carolina. And the folks who worked with us were our family. I can remember our parts manager in Waynesville came to my dad's house when he finally got around to building a new home in Waynesville. Ed came to our house and hung the curtains in the den. It was just that kind of thing. And we wanted to move into the new building. My dad built a new Chevrolet dealership in Waynesville, and one of our employees wired the PA system in the building. It was just Bud Presley, who was the used car manager at my dad's Chevy store. He was with my dad and with me. I sort of grew up under him. For 25 years, and we'd go on hunting trips out west together, and we drove. So we spent 2 or 3 days in the car getting to Wyoming and Colorado and places like that, and it was just, that's the way we were, and we worked really hard, even though we're big. bigger. We have a lot of people, but we still strive to hang on to that same, connection and set of values.
Yeah, that's great. I was wondering, from your early roots all the way till present day, I'm sure there are so many different changes and just the technology, but the processes. Have you seen anything in the past few years that have just blown your mind as far as changes or like, wow, people are buying cars in different ways now?
Well, they are. The difference is always changed. The business has always changed. The pace of change has increased. That's the biggest thing. The industry's changed and evolved, and the way we do business, the way the factories do business, the vehicles, gosh, they're just incredible compared to what we used to have. They're awesome. But, obviously now people do much more research online. People used to go from dealership to dealership, kicking tires, everybody called it, and researching cars and trying to gather information. Well, it's so much easier now. And we communicate with people online. Oftentimes, by the time they get to one of our brick and mortar locations, they already know what they want, they know who they're going to buy it from, they know what they're going to pay for it. And it's so easy, it's easier for everybody.
That is true. I guess transparency in the car business, sometimes it's thought of as a negative, but really it's a positive because, and I think the customers, I read a statistic that said, I believe it's people do an average of about 13 hours of online research before they ever go to a car dealership. And like you said, a lot of the hard work has been done by the customers. And I guess that would help any auto representative is people know what they want.
Yeah, it's made our frontline people be more on their toes because we went through a period when the customer would arrive knowing more about the car than we did or our representative did. So, we had to sharpen our game. And look, I have to admit, there was a time in our industry when we feared transparency. And we worried about all the information that was available on the internet. And frankly, to our surprise, it turned out to be our friend. It's made for more pleasant, more cordial transactions and longer-term relationships with customers, We've never wanted to be a transaction-oriented business. We've always wanted to be a relationship-oriented business and do business the same salespeople with the same customers is the dream, And the more transparency you have and the smoother that process goes, the happier everybody involved is, and it gets us towards that goal of having a relationship-based business instead of a transaction-based one.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's funny how you can look at something that was once perceived as we don't want that to. No, it helps the whole process, and we can be a better resource to our customers.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
And when you were talking about how cars have changed, do you remember your first car?
Oh yes, very well. 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air.
What color was it?
Dust Pearl.
Dust? You even know the name of it?
Yes. I thought it was a terrible color. It was a four-door sedan, pretty car. 57 Chevys are a classic car.
Oh, yeah.
And my dad thought he was really doing something special for me, so he got this trade-in, and gosh, at that time it would have been 7 or 8 years old, 9 years old, I guess. And he had it painted, had it repainted, trying to really make it nice, for my first car. And I'd give anything in the world if he painted it black. But he painted it in its original colors, and it's some old woman ordered it in dust pearl with a white top. So that's what I got.
That was the perfect car.
Well, I was thankful to have it, I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, as young people, we're just happy to have wheels.
Hey, having wheels was a big deal. I was fortunate to have it.
Yeah, and I'm sure, obviously, since this is a Toyota franchise here, you've seen lots of different Toyota models come down the pipeline. Do you have any favorite models?
Oh, there have been so many wonderful cars, but the one that really comes to mind is a 1987 or 88 Celica convertible, 5-speed. And the reason it does is that we were new here in Raleigh, and this was our first Toyota dealership. And one of our managers was so impressed with this car, he said, "You've got to go out with me and take a drive in this car." He said, "Get in the driver's seat and let's just go down." So and the car was so smooth. He and I both had backgrounds with other auto manufacturers, So this was our first Toyota experience. So we get in this car, and then the motor is like a fine Swiss watch, It's just so tight and so smooth, revs so quickly. I mean, that car's always stuck in my mind. It's probably not a collectible car nowadays, but it's one of my favorite all-time
Oh, that's
Toyotas,
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's
The
fantastic.
Supra is probably most people's favorite car. What was that in the '90s? That turbo Supra.
They've been asking about that since I started in sales in '05. When are you bringing back the Supra? When are you bringing back the Celica? In fact, people asked about it so much that I started to dig into that, and I had a silver '95 Celica GT, and you're right about that. It's a whole different experience.
We saw one of the turbo Supras from the '90s was sold on bringatrailer.com for $125,000 or $30,000 about a year ago.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, I was watching it on the road. I thought I might want to buy it. It had 8,000 or 9,000 miles on it. It was in perfect condition. So, I don't think I want it that bad.
I don't like it that much.
Yeah.
So yes, this is Fred Anderson Toyota, but what other brands have you always admired, or do you like driving their vehicles?
Well, I'm a big Porsche fan. I like Porsches of all eras, old ones and new ones. And I like the old Enzo era Ferraris. I think they're beautiful. The ones designed by Pininfarina. I think some of the most beautiful cars, and they're art, As are some of the early Porsches are the same. I think, those early cars were an art form, and they're beautiful. And as you know, they're very collectible. So a lot of them bring far more money than they did when they were new.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Who would have ever thought that a vehicle was an appreciating asset?
Oh, yeah. I haven't had much luck with that, but the old ones, the older it is, the better you have of seeing some appreciation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So I guess in wrapping things up, one question is always stuck in my mind, and you get to see the whole dealership experience, and you get to hear feedback from customers. But if I was a new customer and I was wondering where should I service my vehicle, or where should I buy my new car? I mean, there are a lot of choices out there. Why would I choose Fred Anderson Toyota to do business with?
Yeah. Well, as you can imagine, I get a lot of phone calls from friends and say, look, I want to go out to your store here, or this city or that city, and buy a car, and I was wondering if you could refer somebody to me. And what I always say to them is, well, our goal is that you should be able to walk in the front door unannounced and have a wonderful experience. But I have a list of people. I'll go down the list and try to recommend somebody for them to see if they actually want a contact person.
Right.
But that's the reason, is because, the reason is I really think we provide that. People come and they have a good experience in our service department. Excuse my lack of modesty, but we're pretty good at the service business.
We're one of the top, if not the top, in the entire Southeast region. I know this
it's one of our strengths. And we have a wonderful team of people in there, and they do a great job. That's probably the bottom line of it. Why would you want to do business with one of our dealerships, with Fred Anderson Toyota? It's the people that are here. That's the best answer I can give, and it's the right answer.
It's beautiful. Couldn't say it any better myself.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Anderson, thank you so much for taking your time today.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, Jeff.
I think people will really appreciate getting to know the philosophy and why Fred Anderson Toyota is the way Fred Anderson Toyota is. It has such a fantastic reputation. I think it's something we're all proud of. I would assume you're even more proud of your baby.
Well, I'm happy you're proud, and that's very important to me.
That's great. Well, everybody, thank you so much, and thanks to Mr. Anderson. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think, and please be part of our YouTube community. Join our YouTube channel, Fred Anderson Toyota, and of course, you can follow us on our social media platforms. We're also very proud, and we have fun there too. We're at Fred Anderson Toyota on Instagram and Fred Anderson Toyota on Facebook. Thanks, everybody, so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.